Morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Tom Brackett. I'm the president of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to our first webinar of 2026. We will co-host regularly this year with NJM and NJM Insurance Group, who we have done these webinars with for several years. Over the year, we will cover many major topics. But today, the topic that we're going to cover is entitled Competing for Talent, the New Rules for Hiring and Retention for 2026. The panelists will explore modern recruiting strategies, benefits that actually drive retention, and how employees and employers can attract young and seasoned workers, which are both needed in today's environment. So we've got a lot to cover. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please go and enter your questions in the chat box, and we will get to as many of them at the end as we can. I want to thank NJM Insurance Group for continuing to partner with us this year. They've been a great partner of ours for many years, and they're one of New Jersey's premier corporate citizens. So thanks a lot to NJM Insurance Group for partnering with us. So to introduce today's webinar and to introduce NJM to all of you, I'd like to introduce Heather Jones, HR Talent Acquisition Specialist, NJM Insurance Group. Heather, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Heather Jones, Senior Talent Acquisition and University Relations Specialist for NJM Insurance Group. Thank you for allowing me to briefly speak with you this morning. NJM is pleased to be the exclusive sponsor of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce's Small Business Webinar Series. This morning's webinar will discuss how labor shortages, shifting worker expectations, and skill-based hiring are reshaping employees' landscapes. NJM has been the largest writer of workers' compensation insurance in New Jersey for over 75 years. We're also a leading provider of commercial auto insurance. Our newest products include ProEdge Business Owners Policies, which combines protection for common property and liability risks designed for smaller businesses, as well as the NJM ProPack Commercial Package Policy, which protects mid to large-sized businesses against property and liability risks. At NJM, we focus on providing the highest level of service. We want to help our policyholders grow and, in turn, grow with them by offering an outstanding customer experience. We switched to an agency model several years ago to expand operations into additional markets as well. In my role, I help execute our recruiting strategies and work closely with other teams to drive employee retention. That's why I'm excited today for today's webinar topic, which will delve into jobs descriptions, compensation structures, and career pathways to help businesses and stay competitive. If you're not an NJM business customer, I encourage you to visit njm.com to search our agency network and learn more about our commercial offerings and how you can get a quote for your business. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. And also thanks again to NJM Insurance Group for putting on these webinars for us and co-hosting these webinars over the past years and the balance of this year. So today we have three very qualified individuals who will discuss the topic that we have. The people on our panel are Lindsay Dischley, member, practice group leader, employment and labor law, CSG Law. We have Ottaviana De Ruvo. Did I get that right, Ottaviana?
Yeah.
The engagement and retention strategist with Withum. And we have Nick Malefyt, the president of Master Search Solutions. So what I'd like to do is have each of you quickly introduce yourselves and your background so we can get started. So Lindsay, would you like to kick it off, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us early this morning. My name is Lindsay Dischley. As they mentioned, I am a partner and practice group leader of our employment law group here at CSG. I do all things employment law, from counseling to agreements and policies to litigation as well. I've been with my firm for 18 years, and this is all I've been doing since I started. So lots of experience. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Thank you very much. Ottaviana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ottaviana De Ruvo. I'm our Withum's engagement and retention strategist. I've been at the firm now for about 14 years. I started on the accounting side, and then I transitioned over to the operations side in 2021 when this role was created to help reduce and ensure that our turnover remained low. So I have seen everything, and I continue to see everything about our team member experience. So I'm excited to talk about retention strategies today.
Thank you, Nick.
Good morning. I'm Nick Malefyt, President of Master Search Solutions. We are a New Jersey-centric recruiting firm. I'm the past Vice President of the New Jersey Staffing Alliance, and I've been in the recruiting industry for 32 years now.
So just to kick this off, probably one of the biggest issues facing New Jersey business today. I mean, New Jersey has many issues that we're facing from a business standpoint, but probably right at the top of everybody's list is the workforce. There are job openings, we know they're difficult to fill, and there are issues about retaining people because of the competitive nature of our environment right now. So workforce issues are front and center in New Jersey, and we will discuss several questions today, hopefully to help define some ways to enhance hiring and enhance retention of those employees. So I guess to kick it off, let me ask a question about what the biggest shifts in hiring and retention have been over the last couple of years, and how do they shape employer strategies in 2026? So, Lindsay, you want to kick that one off?
Sure, sure. So what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients is they're really focusing more on niche and special areas. So more targeted job descriptions where they're not laundry listing a lot of different skills, especially those entry level skills that AI might be handling. They're focusing more on people with that nuanced knowledge that AI can't touch yet. I'm also seeing a lot of my clients more willing to give a higher initial salary offering for that reach or let's say A employee rather than trying to save money and see the fallout of what happens when a bad hire goes wrong. I'm also seeing, and I think this has gone on for a little bit now, is really scrutinizing resumes and the employees who jump, job jump, because a sign of somebody who's jumped before is a sign of somebody that's going to be a retention problem off the bat. So I'm seeing a lot more scrutiny, skills scrutiny to make sure they have those specialty 1 to 2 to 3 skills that they're really looking to fulfill in that specific role. That's what I'm seeing in it with my clients.
Okay. Ottaviana?
For me, I think it's more about the team member experience, right? From day one, the minute they are in the interview process, all throughout their career path at the firm, it's how are we looking at them as a person, not just a number? And how are we making sure that they see the transparency and they see the longevity of their career path at the firm, right? How do we see their purpose? How do we tie it to the work that they're doing? And making sure that they have the best overall team member experience. That's something that we have seen drastically, like one of the primary questions that we get during that interview process to continue on to say, how do I get to the next level? How can I make an impact at the firm and provide value every day?
Nick?
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to the Chamber. Thanks to NJM for sponsoring. I'm on my end, I would take it just a little different as far as like big shifts. I think we've seen like increases in layoffs, some hiring freezes. I think something that's pretty different over the last 2 years has been pay transparency. I think right now, like unemployment, is also another higher unemployment is another shift that we're seeing. And contrary to maybe what the ladies have seen is pay growth slowdowns. So in some of the industries, I think employers are being a little bit more cautious as to how much they're paying. And then just in general, how this kind of shapes everything is just kind of what Lindsay said, but like more selective hiring. So really narrowing things down to what they feel are the right candidates.
So recently I read an article that said that resumes are they're not being used as prominently as they were in the past. That the biggest issue is the cultural fit of the people who are being hired, assuming that their resume does indicate that they have the job qualifications, which, you're only going to know after they've been there a while. So talk a little bit about in the hiring area, how important is the cultural fit of the people you're interviewing?
I could come in. Oh, Lindsay, did you want to
This always gives me like a little bit of anxiety because cultural fit is such an important thing. But when I think of cultural fit, I have to think more of in terms of work ethic and work commitment, not sort of, I want to say like personality, because sometimes when we only go by that gut feeling and cultural fit as sort of like a qualitative more than a quantitative, we run the risk of only hiring people that look like us and making decisions based on things that we shouldn't be making decisions based on. And I do think that that's something that people are trying to steer away from. So it's tough because you're working with these people, and to have longevity, everyone needs to get along and have relationships, but it's a tough balance between that and also focusing on the skills and the objective measures that you're making objective hiring decisions. And I think that's always been a balance and always been a struggle. But I do see more employers struggling because they really want to go with that cultural fit because they've been, I don't want to say burned, but burned by people jumping, right? They train them, they invest in them, and then they leave. So it's a tough balance. I see clients struggling with that all the time.
I just wanted to agree with you there, but also from a cultural fit, you want to make sure that, the person you're hiring is committed and is looking to become the next leader and is looking to spend the time to train the younger team members within the firm and be a fellow like role model for them. And so I think when thinking about cultural fit, it's about, okay, do I see potential in this person? Do they have experience as being a leader, or at least sticking out in a way that, shows they have a lot of potential and a lot of like advice that they can give, especially as you're working more and more within a team basis.
Okay.
I would just say, like, in regards to what Tom had mentioned in regards to the resume, I feel that cultural fit would probably be the most difficult point to get across on a resume. On a resume, you could look at experience, you could look at skills, you could look at location based on whether things were, an in-office type of role. I think that as far as resume, things like Lindsay again had referenced like work ethic or commitment, and I think those are really hard things to see on a resume. I think that goes more towards, I think that the bigger shift that we've seen on resumes, Tom, has been more along the lines of that skill-based hiring and where skills fit in versus prior experience. But I would think that cultural fit really comes about more via an interview process than it can come across on a resume.
So because you've all kind of highlighted the importance of cultural fit, when you are interviewing somebody, what tactics do you use to try to get a feel for if they fit your culture?
So, I mean, I'm in a unique scenario because we work by the billable hours. So I always, I always ask number one, what'd you bill last year, or what's your average billable? But aside from that, I think I like to ask, especially more junior levels, what would you like to do in the next year? What are the things that you want to achieve in the next year? What about the next 5 years? And if they're thinking about that and they're wanting to tackle realistic but reach projects and they're ambitious and they're excited about things, I think especially even just the way they talk about things that they'd like to accomplish in the future, you can see the excitement in certain people's and the love of the job versus the mechanics of going through the motions. Because I mean, I know when I talk about employment law, as strange as it is, I'm always passionate about it. And I think that comes through in an interview when people talk about what they want to do or where they see themselves on that career path. So that's worked for me. I don't know what everyone else feels.
I look at two different qualities, right? One is exactly what Lindsay mentioned is what do they look to accomplish, like what are they looking to accomplish in the next year, in the next 2 years? But also, especially for the younger team members, what have you accomplished so far? What have you done while you were in school? What other extracurricular activities outside of school have you been involved with? And how do you show those leadership qualities there? How do you show that you've been great at interacting with other people and that you could share those values here at the firm?
Mhm.
So for me, as a third party recruiter, a good way for me to assess cultural fit is to ask people situational based questions that I know how my client, so the employer, would respond to make sure that their thinking is in alignment. Um, and that they're really on the same page as to how they would respond to certain things.
So, having recruited people in my career, and we're in the process of doing that right now, we feel that we have a very strong team concept here. Everybody is pulling on the same oar, and people help each other and so forth. I think the one turnoff I've had in talking to people is when a potential employee says, "How many days a week do I have to come into the office?" To me, that flies right in the face of teamwork and culture. So just give me your reaction to that.
I Can I chime in here? I think one of the biggest perks is coming into the office, and I always tell the team members or the people we're interviewing or working with is, you're going to be working with your team, and the best way to learn, especially when you're starting off your career, is by observing those around you, right? Watching how somebody speaks to a client, watching how somebody speaks to, their manager or their partner. And so that is the best way to learn. And also, instead of waiting for somebody's status on Teams or Zoom, whatever you use, to go from busy to available, when you're in the office, you actually have the resources right around you to ask somebody the question, ask somebody for help. That's the best way to learn. And then it's also, meeting somebody in the lunchroom, right? And starting that conversation, starting to build that internal network, which is super key
Mhm.
for success. So that's how I go about it. And if they're still not about, supporting that, then it might not be the right fit for the firm.
Yep.
I
So let me
I
shift
completely
gears
agree.
to retention. Um, over the years, companies have used many different tools to retain employees. Um, what what tools today are actually the most prominent in driving the retention of your employees? Anybody want to kick it off?
I'll go. Well, this isn't contrary to what Tom or Ottaviana just discussed, but I think, one of the things is flexible work schedules, and I am in a good position in knowing ahead of time what my clients' typical work schedules look like. Is it in office? Is it hybrid? Is it remote? So I do feel in certain situations that is that flexible work schedule. And it doesn't just mean that, it might also mean instead of a traditional 9 to 5, what are the workarounds? If I come in at, 8 to 4, is it 11 to, whatever? So I think that those are definitely some of the when they're meeting the people kind of halfway. I think retirement tools are a big thing today for people. Health benefits I feel are always going to be important, but I think like a new addition to that might be considered mental health resources. It would be another thing that I've seen my clients really start to embrace. So those would be a couple that I would start off with.
Okay.
flexibility is key, absolutely, especially when we can prove that we can work, remotely at this point. And I think it just comes down to communication, right? And making sure that, if you need to log off and log back on later on at night, or, childcare, personal family matters, I think as long as, team members communicate that and that flexibility is there, it's a huge perk. Along with all the other, wellness programs, we've seen an uptick in those wellness programs and how important it is, right? And it ties back to what Nick mentioned about mental health. Those are some significant perks along the years. And then just your traditional insurance, programs, especially pet insurance has been a big one. And some childcare benefits as well, I think have been great.
You say pet insurance, as in dogs and cats?
Yeah, it's huge.
Really?
Yeah. I agree.
We have not had to offer that yet. Oh,
I mean, I would take pet insurance. It's as a dog lover. I agree. I think flexibility and personalization. I think across generations is people want to be recognized. They want to feel important. They want to feel like things are tailored to them. And I think I've spoken on several panels about this. I find that the flexibility in holidays, flexibility, right? Not just going with traditional holidays, flexibility with the work schedule, flexibility with where you work, flexibility in policies. I've even seen some of my clients expand between not just giving family leave for babies, but family leave to care for ailing parents. So I think it's just flexibility in where people come and show up and are in their stage of life, to have that sensitivity to their needs and show that you care for them and that they're important. Birthday recognitions, that's really important to certain generations now, where it may not be for older generations. Easy things like that just show that care to the individual workforce and meeting them where they were. I feel like where they are is really big.
And I think one thing that we missed is it should be included here is professional growth opportunities. Just having the ability or seeing what the road ahead looks like.
mhm. So, Lindsay, you talked about, you used the phrase the older generation. So you have the older generation who has more traditional views of working, 8:30 to 5, 4 or 5 days a week. And then you have the issue of the new generation who are focused more on flexibility. So there's some big gaps in those two things. So how do you balance those two in your companies to maintain a culture that is unifying?
Communication is key. A lot of we rotate who runs meetings across generations, and we also communicate. Especially in my firm alone. I grew up in a firm where everything was a written memo, formal, and you printed it out and you put it on the partner's chair and they got it in paper. And the new generation is, I don't show up, I'm going to send it to you in an email, and it's going to be just an email informal response to get the answer done. And I think just communicating expectations and what each person wants, and not taking either one as unnecessary or unprofessional. It's really just where people are. If you're communicating, hey, I need this in a more formal form, or okay, an email or a phone call is appropriate, or we should meet in person, or give me the answer in person. I think once we communicate how we want things, people are happy to meet that expectation, but they don't know somebody wants something different if they only know the way they've been doing it. Especially if we are working somewhat remote and hybrid, we're not learning people's priorities or people's preferences as much. And I think that communication across generations, you start understanding why they're doing things the way they're doing. Because younger generations are like, why do I need to do that when I can give you the answer? It's cheaper, more efficient. And sometimes I'm thinking, wow, they're right. That's better for the client, right? So I think just the communication is so critical. And in-person contact is really, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I think what's extremely valuable to note here, especially when you're working with different generational mindsets too, is, being upfront and direct of saying, okay, like, let's meet on Tuesday between this time and this time so that we can work together in the huddle room, right? And we can answer any questions you may have. obviously we can always like email each other or message each other on the side, but this is going to be our time to work together as a team. That way it's telling somebody Tuesday, you have to meet in the office from this time to this time. And of course, there's flexibility there if somebody has a conflict, right? And much like what Lindsay said, everybody is so different. We all grew up with different managers and partners, and expectations are a little bit different. And so asking the team, like from day one, how would you like communication to be is super important, because there are some people that want everything written in an email, while there's others that are like, just shoot me a message on Teams. And others that are like, call me if you have questions. So I always, when I'm mentoring the younger team members, I'm always saying, make sure you're asking the managers that you're working with, what are your expectations? And on the flip side, when I work with the managers, I let them know, like, hey, be upfront, right? And talk to your staff about what your expectations are and what their communication expectations are. So you're on the same page and you understand, when are those status updates going to happen? Uh, what time are you going to be in the office? Are you meeting on a specific day? I think that's super important.
And I think Ottaviana touched on and said it, the word mentorship. I work with a lot of entry-level college grads. I do a lot of work with Seton Hall University, so my alum, and a lot of the younger students that I work with want mentorship. They want to be in office. And so I feel mentorship is a great way to bridge the gap between those two, age groups. And I think that there is a such thing, if tactically handled correctly, as reverse mentorship, especially when it comes to tech. And I know it has to be kind of, handled the right way, but certainly the younger generation can help more mature workers understand the importance and the value that tech can bring to the table. And the last thing I would say about the different age gaps within the workforce would also be to, in a way, hire for mission and vision alignment. Like when people are behind the same thing, the vision of the company, the mission of the company, it makes it a lot easier for people to get along.
And I did want to just chime in real quick because I forgot to mention it, and it goes along with the mentorship and the retention tools. I think one of the most important retention tools is to show, hey, look at the leaders that you're going to be working with and how long have they been at the firm, right? Are they somebody that, perhaps were in your shoes when you started right out of college, and now look at them, look at where they are 5 years later, 10 years later. That can be you. And that can be very motivational for those individuals. I think it's super important.
So for veteran employees, providing mentorship to younger employees or newly hired employees is a key for retention, and for those same veteran employees, their need to accept the flexibility needs of the younger people coming in. Those two things are, I guess, important to provide overall retention to the company.
And I just want
Absolutely.
to add there, because I saw one of the questions come up in the chat. When the veteran employees are working with our newer employees, it's not just about meeting with them to go over the project, but actually trying to form some form of relationship, right? Getting to know them so that you create that psychological safety that can then, allow the team members to be like, oh wow, like I want to work more with this manager. I want to work more with this partner, because they are really investing their time in working with me. They want to know who I am. It's not just I'm a staff doing this work and we're billing the client. It's more of, I'm this team member. I want to learn. I want to be you tomorrow. How can I get there? I think that's key.
So as companies evolve, um, there are traditional perks that companies build into their organizations. I would think that as the new generation comes along, some of those traditional perks probably don't work anymore. Do you have any thoughts on perks that used to be important to retention that just no longer apply?
I struggled with this question, Tom, like because I feel like a lot of the traditional perks are still important. I think, pay is still going to be important. Health benefits are still going to be important. I think I think that the biggest traditional one was what I mentioned before, that working that 9 to 5, like not that it's a perk, but it's like doesn't really need to hold up anymore unless there's a specific reason, like that's the operating hours, that's the operating hours. But I did struggle trying to figure out like, well, what are the traditional things that people don't want anymore? I think people just want more as they,
Right.
and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think as people become, more sophisticated, more educated, there's a more sophisticated, buyer, more educated buyer, and they just, they want things that are going to fit into their life.
So,
Yeah. I mean, the only one I could think of that I don't see as much is like, and maybe I'm wrong, is I don't think people are as driven by, oh, I get a phone or whatever. I mean, everyone has such a phone now, or a, you know what I mean, or a phone plan now that I feel like those are the things that are like, I feel like that used to be a big deal. I don't know.
Some
Am I
people
wrong on
might say pizza
that?
and coffee, and I have to say, like
And
my
food.
son works for a law firm, and he loves their coffee bar. So if somebody said, "Oh no, get rid of the pizza and the coffee," I would say, like, no, it's still a
Food.
perk that I think people like.
People
Yeah,
people
free food
like
is
food
always a
and
big perk.
beverage, but yeah, I agree. I agree with Nick. I think it's not that any have become sort of
Obsolete.
outdated or obsolete. I think they're just evolving, and there's more. And I work with a lot of foreign companies. I'd say that even the U.S. is behind in what they're doing, even in other countries. So I think it's good. This is the start, right? I think this is not going to end. I think there's going to be a continued evolution of requests. We're going to continue to see these shifts, because even as my European clients come to the U.S., they're adapting their policies to stay consistent with what they're giving their clients overseas. So, and people talk, and employees now, they talk and they ask. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, as the world gets smaller in so many ways, how these perks even continue to evolve and grow and expand and not diminish anywhere.
so regarding both hiring and retention, what are the most prominent benefits that you have to have within your organizations to attract and retain people? I mean, I'm sure that there are certain benefits that are tailored to each company, but what are the basic benefits that have to be in place if you want to be competitive?
Health insurance is still a hard one. I don't care what anybody says. It's one of the top 3 questions we're asked all of the time. And again, no matter what people say about compensation, and I know we can touch upon that, like comp is still number one. When I'm talking to a candidate, what does the job pay? Like that's still there. I mean, we can try and get around it all the time. I think health care is typically number two. Like, so what is that benefit package? And when people are considering offer from another firm, one of the top 3 things that they're looking at is what is the benefit package going to cost me here versus what is it going to cost me here? Is it for myself? Is it for the family? So I still feel like health insurance is big. And I feel like that those retirement tools or those 401ks, those pensions, those profit sharings are all still really important. You mentioned things before, loan repayment, mental health resources. I think,
Parental leave, I think, is now an expected. I don't think people are getting away with only giving state or, benefits. I think most companies are now giving some sort of a supplemental parental leave. And I think I know candidates are certainly asking. That's become something, and that's something my clients have been coming to me very consistently with over the last 2 years, is we need to get this policy in place. That's what I'm seeing a lot of.
I think in addition to the parental leave and the insurance benefits, um, if there's some sort of skill and credentials that are required for your firm, right? Like working in a public accounting firm, the CPA is extremely important, right? And getting your master's, like an MST, things like that. And so what are your firm's policies on tuition reimbursement, credentials reimbursement? What does that look like? Do they get a bonus for passing the exam? Do you pay for the study materials? That's super important. Those are top questions that we receive from our candidates.
So the topic of paid leave days, over the years, I've seen it go from you were allocated so many vacation days and so many sick days. Then it became lumped together to be just personal days that you take. And a lot of companies have totally scrapped the idea of maximum numbers of days off and do whatever you want just so you get your job done. So how flexible are companies with regard to their benefits regarding paid time off?
I think it's different by industry. I think the services industry, where you just need to get the work done and you're an exempt employee, I'm seeing a lot more flexibility and maximum days off. I think when you have non-exempt workforce where they're expected in the office and you need them to sort of be in office, I'm still seeing the traditional days off. Where I'm seeing the flexibility is in flexible holidays where you're not glued to the holidays of a typical, here's the 10 bank or 12 bank holidays, where people are getting a lot more versatility and flexibility and what holidays are important to them, right? Because not everyone celebrates Christmas. Not everyone celebrates good, the different holidays. So I'm seeing a lot more flexibility with the non-exempt employees as far as it relates to how and when they can use certain holidays more than anything, versus maximizing just get your work done. So it really depends, I think, on the employee's position for what I'm seeing.
I agree with Lindsay. I think it depends on the industry. Specifically, within the professional services industry, accounting, billable hours is a big, tool. And so as long as our team members are meeting their requirement there and are getting our client services done right and on time, then there's a lot of flexibility in that PTO, OTO, however you want to call it. And then also, there's a lot of flexibility where perhaps you don't really need to take the OTO to go to an hour doctor appointment. You could always make up your time later on in the week, right? And so there's a lot of perks with having that opportunity as well.
So I guess a lot of that depends on the size company. I know companies like JP Morgan, employees have to scan in and scan out every day, and people keep score of who shows up and the hours that they put into their jobs in the building. And then Goldman Sachs, 2 years ago, when they had a big series of layoffs, were guided a lot by the amount of time employees were in the office. So that's a much more rigid kind of environment than smaller companies where I think all of you said you need to be more flexible. Is that pretty much it? So, question. Here's a term I keep hearing, and I'd like you all to define this term. Skills-based hiring. What is skills-based hiring versus traditional type hiring criteria? Nick?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to prioritizing abilities, competencies, transferable skill sets compared to degrees, titles, or tenures. Maybe you've heard the term in the past, like hire for skill, not for school. And I think, for me personally, I don't know if you were going to get into this, Tom, but what I found is it's not that it's abandoning school. It's in addition to, it's just like everything else. I mean, I still think some clients are still going, or some employers are still going to have educational requirements. I don't think it's necessarily giving up one for the other, but I feel like it's focusing more on those transferable skills than it is just on education alone, for example.
Yeah. So the education can be defined in many forms, is what you're saying.
Yes, and the other thing is too, like some employers don't look at education for the value of the degree. This is, I mean, I've been doing this over 30 years. Some employers look at it as, well, we just want to see that someone had a degree because it shows that they set a goal and they stick to a goal. It wasn't even, well, what was the end degree? What did they study? It was another way of telling, were they able to set a goal and stick to the goal? Like that's even just another way of thinking about education in its own right, like a degree that way.
Lindsay or Ottaviana?
It's actually funny. I was actually on with a client yesterday thinking about this seminar, and I said, "Let me ask you something." She has an online retail company, and I said, "Do you when you look at a candidate, do you look at education? Do you look at skills?" She's like, "I have never looked at education, ever." She said, "I look where they've been, what they've done, and their skills." She's like, I've never looked at education." I thought that was so interesting because it's just such an interesting take, and she's been incredibly successful at bringing on and retaining client, and she's been successful at bringing in clients for certain skills where they've had the experience elsewhere and been trained elsewhere and they're experts in their industry, and then she has others that she's brought on, and she's when they're more operations that she's been able to train within the organization. They've evolved into great leaders within the company, starting somewhere and then ending up with a completely different skill set, but through the company. And not once does she care about a degree or education. So I think it's just interesting people's takes and what they're looking for. But I'm definitely seeing a shift in skills because some of these things we don't learn in school anyways now, right? It's
Yep.
through these new needs.
Yeah, I think it depends on the role and the
Yeah.
industry that, you're hiring for. If it's something like to become a lawyer or to become a CPA, you obviously need the credentials
Hmm.
from school. But if it's a different type of role that doesn't necessarily need those credentials, it might just be what other qualities does the candidate have that can be beneficial for that role. So I think it's just very dependent on what that role looks like for that company.
I remember when customer service always, they were running ads, let's say 10, 15 years ago, and it always said, has to have a college degree. And you would always question, does it really for like, and not,
Yep.
talking down about it at all, but does it really require a college degree to perform that job function?
So interviewing candidates for jobs, give me your impression of Zoom interview versus in-person interview.
Oof.
In
In
person all day
person.
long.
In person.
Is that the tactic, both Lindsay and Ottaviana, do you both use in-person versus Zoom?
It depends on where the candidate is, and where I live, where I am, and if we can meet halfway. Um, there's certainly perks to both. But I think you get a lot more in person, right? You really get to see like their mannerisms more, the just like their overall vibe during the interview, and I think that's key.
Zoom to me is a good first interview. Like if I'm looking to screen someone out, like I'm not sure, so I'll take a couple, 15, 20 minutes. I'll hop on the Zoom call, okay, it confirmed my feelings, but to make a hiring decision, and again, I'm not talking about remote jobs. I mean, it's its own entity. But for in-person roles or hybrid roles, yeah, I'm going to want to meet that person 100% in person
Yeah.
before making a hiring decision.
Lindsay, how do you handle that?
In person, absolutely 100%. I also like, I think nowadays, to see how people show up or if they're willing to make the effort to make the trip in and be on time. It's very easy to pop onto a screen on time, but it's amazing the things that we forget that you see when someone just needs to show up for an appointment.
And there are going to be
In
things
person.
that you're not going to be able to see on a Zoom that you will see on an in-person, which could give you cues about the person's communication style, confidence, again, timeliness, all of it can play into.
Right.
Yep. So, big elephant in the room, AI. How are you all viewing AI as it impacts hiring and retention?
I'm going to chime in from a retention standpoint. I think AI is a great tool if it's used correctly, especially when you are looking for some support or for a challenge, right? Using AI in regards to challenging yourself and giving it a little bit of background of, the scenario you might be in or the feedback you're trying to provide or the advice you're trying to relay and utilizing it as a tool for, okay, challenge me. What are some questions I should be thinking about? What are some tools I should be thinking about that perhaps I'm not thinking about? I personally think it's extremely beneficial if it's used in the right way.
Okay. Lindsay?
So I find that AI is definitely forcing people, and I keep going back to this, it's forcing people to sort of set themselves apart and specialize and fill roles that AI can't do, because AI right now is doing a lot of the basic things. And I'm seeing a lot of people actually terminate employees because they're finding out they're doing their jobs only utilizing AI and not adding any value beyond what a chat GPT is doing. And the instructions have to be, do not use AI. I can do that. You need to add value beyond that. So I'm actually seeing my first round of various employees terminating, employers terminating employees because they're trying to actually get away with doing their jobs AI. I mean, I think on the other end of the service industry, I'm also seeing a lot more of my clients all of a sudden have the light bulb go off and say, wait, we need an AI policy, because we know now everyone's using AI and we want to make sure, I mean, especially if you think about it in my industry, a total completely peripheral concern is I can't put confidential client information into a public AI database, right? We have to make sure that we're controlling how it's being used. So I'm seeing it infiltrate my work area in so many different ways, from the terminations for using it and having it be your job to how we need to control how people use it for confidential and proprietary information. So it's definitely become a daily topic of my job, and it's just different how different it's hitting you from different standpoints and different issues.
We've embedded it in our software and it's amazing and it does a lot of great things, but there are still recruiters behind the back end. It still requires people to make the decisions. It might tell us statistically what candidate is a better fit. A recruiter still reading the resume and making the decision as to where that is. So, I mean, I think I have a law firm, a legal client right now that's looking to try and not fall behind on the AI front. It's not about the tool, it's about leveraging the tool. So they're still hiring a business and people process manager that will, utilize AI to help increase efficiencies, reduce redundancies, across offices. They have multiple offices. At the end of the day, there's still a person performing in that role.
As I said up front, one of the biggest issues New Jersey is facing is the need for workforce, more in the workforce. With a new administration, the Sherrill administration being much more business focused than the Murphy administration, if we are going to grow our economy, we have to be able to have the availability of qualified workers to fill the jobs that these companies need to be able to grow. So New Jersey, to create more enthusiasm for people to come into New Jersey and to look for jobs in New Jersey, what would you all say we need to do that is important to make New Jersey more friendly to workers and to create these jobs that are going to be key to enhancing our economy?
I feel like that's a great question for Tom Bracken to answer.
Well, you missed the boat on that one, Nick.
I would just say honestly, I almost take it like an employer, and it's almost like flipping the script. For so long, maybe we've been talking about why businesses have been leaving New Jersey, and now it's like flipping the script. Why do people stay? Why are people finding New Jersey a good place for them to conduct business, whether it's, geography or logistics, all those things. But I couldn't answer the question as well as Tom can.
So with that
on the state level,
with that deferred answer, I'm going to Kevin Friedlander to ask some of the questions that are in the chat box.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Great conversation here. Here's one saying, how do you avoid the pitfalls of hiring someone who did really well in the interview? They met all the criteria, checked all the boxes, but then when they show up to work, on the first day, and then the ensuing days, they're just not, what you thought you hired, and you have buyer's remorse. So how do you avoid those pitfalls?
I mean, I can help you avoid the pitfalls of creating an issue where you can't fire them. Um, you need to immediately document bad performance, and you need to not give them raises and bonuses. I think that a lot of my clients get stuck when they hire somebody and they fall into these traps of not writing things down. And sometimes when these employees come on and they realize that maybe they bit off more than they can chew and it's not the right fit, they start panicking and they start asking for different leaves, or things come out and they say, but I wanted to fire them anyways, but they haven't documented anything. That's one of my biggest pitfalls I'm seeing for employers is they get themselves stuck with somebody, or they think, well, we can't fire them because we just hired them. That's not the case. If somebody's not working out, I find the longer you drag on the process without documenting bad performance, the longer and the more opportunity there is to create a bigger problem. So it just has to be a documentation, and once there's enough documentation, you just need to rip off the Band-Aid. And especially when people say, I want to do a PIP, I want to do a PIP. My view of PIPs is if they're never going to succeed on the PIP, don't do the PIP. You're better off just terminating. You're just creating a bigger problem. So that's the only way I've seen to avoid the pitfalls of a bad hire. You're not doing anyone favors by keeping them longer than you should.
I think there's also like a proactive tool to this approach, right? And granted, it's not always going to work, but making sure that they have that goes back to mentorship, right? Making sure that starting day one, they know who their go-to person is, and that go-to person is asking them, what are your goals, right? What are you looking to accomplish in the next 6 months, in the next year at the firm? And perhaps meeting with them regularly to discuss like the feedback, right? And that feedback is being documented, like what Lindsay said. I think if you could be proactive in that approach, if you have the resources for that, we use career coaches within our firm. And so utilizing those individuals to be, that mentor for this person to help avoid those pitfalls, I think can be key. It's not always going to work,
Move
right?
up the 90-day meeting.
Yeah.
If a firm has a 90-day, that's when we're going to meet and move it up.
Yeah. 30, 60, 90-day
Yep.
check-ins, right?
There's another question about managers. So we talked a lot about the hiring process, but how can companies upskill their managers so they have a lot of skills that are useful moving down the road?
I'll start here. One of the biggest tools that we utilize over the last few years, right, to help with this retention, is creating like a leadership workshop for the manager group, right? And bringing in those that, perhaps are senior managers or partners to come in and speak with them about their career path, right? Everybody always wants to hear about others' experiences and seeing, okay, is there any correlation there that perhaps it relates to me and I could pursue? So bringing in those that were once a manager to share their experience is key. And then utilizing that time together, if you can, and if you have the resources, to go through some scenarios that they're going to be facing as a manager so that they know what it means to be a manager at your company, what are their responsibilities as a manager, and essentially like giving them the right tools for what they're going to need to know, right? Is it assisting them with how do you relay feedback to the younger team members you're working with? Or is it how do you measure goals and you're working with the younger team members to get them to the next level? How do you review in regards to whatever you're responsible for as manager, right? How are you utilizing the tools available to you to be that manager, to be efficient, to be effective? I think if you have the resources available for like a workshop or, an hour session together, there's a lot of value there.
I absolutely love the leadership workshop angle. I think that's fantastic. I think also to look at the value that outside organizations can bring to the table, things that you're members of, and the trainings that they provide. So, if I was in HR, being a member of SHRM and taking advantage of the Society of Human Resource Management. I know Lindsay and I are in a SHRM chapter together, but I mean, taking advantage of, the trainings that they may offer on a higher level for managers, but that goes across everything. So the NJALA, the New Jersey Association of Legal Administrators, what are they offering for their law firm, or the societies, those types of things. So I think also it's use the things that you're a member of to upskill your managers.
Kevin, I think
Let's try to get it. Let's try to get in one last question.
All right.
We only have like a minute. Lightning round. It was mentioned foreign companies are a little ahead of us as far as I think it was retention or hiring. So what are these foreign companies doing that is ahead of what we're doing here in the United States?
Oh, more so much as benefits. I'm seeing a
Benefits,
lot more
okay.
benefits. Yeah. It's really just the amount of leave they get, flexibility and vacation. They take and also chunks of time, right? Like their vacations in the summer are 2 weeks, but just more in terms of their vacation and their parental leave policies and their leave policies, caregiver policies are a lot richer than ours. I laugh, it's now a few years back. I remember reviewing my first policy where one of my UK clients said, can you just review this policy for the US? And they said, you get 2 duvet days. And I said, what is a duvet day? They go, days you just don't want to get out of bed and you want to just like watch TV. I was like, that's a thing? Like, what? But really just the amount of days off they get and the flexibility. And they also have a lot of statutory severance programs for people who do leave. So they really take care of their employees just in a different way. But certainly it's the significant PTO days. It's truly unbelievable. We just don't offer anything in comparison. And the parental leave, it's months.
All right, back to you, Tom. We're out of time.
Okay, well, Lindsay, Ottaviana, Nick, thank you for your wonderful insight into these very important issues and maybe the most important issue in the state right now. Also, NJM Insurance Group, thank you for your ongoing sponsorship. And I just want to remind everybody that we have some very significant events the Chamber is putting on in the near future. Our Renew Business Summit at Harrah's in Atlantic City, March 31st, April 1st is a can't miss event. If you have been to ones in the past, you will understand the value of going there. We have commitments from the governor, the lieutenant governor, Andy Kim, one of our state senators, many corporate leaders in the state. So please look at those dates as far as participating in our business summit. On May the 18th, we have our annual golf outing at Beatonsbrook Country Club in Skillman, and our open house, which is a very big networking event every year, is on June 11th at the State Museum. So put those on your calendars, please. But thank you all for joining us. I hope you got as much out of this as I did, and keep in touch with our calendar for future NJM webinar events. So thank you all for attending and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.